first off, I need to remind everybody that I'm a basketball coach, and my responsibility is the welfare of our basketball players, our basketball program, and that's always going to be first and foremost moving forward. I really respect this rivalry. I think if you go back in time, the 5 games that I've been involved with, anybody will be able to read, listen, radio, TV, newsprint, that I've always been a big fan of rivalries. That's probably one of my favorite parts about college sports. I also believe that I would not be doing my job in the description that it's given to me for the well-being of our players and our program if I didn't have reason to pause and concern about the nature of some of the recent games. The other element is, if you look at the big picture, I have a job for the basketball program. I think it's a small division of this great university. And if you look around, there's a lot of us. There's hundreds of different areas, different departments and factions. And I think the leader of each of those has a great deal of passion for what they need to stand up for. And I feel really lucky, really fortunate, grateful that my particular area I feel is in harm's way, and I understand the 100 years, the history, and if I didn't raise that concern with my immediate boss, Dr. Hill, and consequently President Pershing, I don't think I'd be doing my job. And so I think it's important, because there is a lot of passion within the university. I want everybody to know how thankful I am that my bosses support me and understand that, and have trust that what I've seen and what the arena that I've been in and what I've experienced specifically through the last 4 years is very heightened, and it's dangerous. So it's with that we've moved forward. Once again, I want to reiterate that I'm a basketball coach. That's my description. I love my job. I love the university. A lot of passion for it, and it's important that people need to understand. If you really reflect on it, we're talking about a game. We're talking about a 40-minute game. We're also talking about some differences now with the landscape of conference realignment and so forth. So with that, I'm not going to hide from anything. Throw out a few questions for anybody to fire away.
Larry, did you think about other alternatives to canceling the game?
It's not really. I got to the point, I think, and this isn't any one event. This is a pattern, as you read in the statement that I created. It's kind of the old adage: fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times, and at some point it's my fault. It was after a couple days, after our latest game, when I really started to reflect on it, think about it, measure it all up, that I raised my concerns, but I don't know what the alternative would be. We have talked about trying to do some type of tournament within the state. There's some great basketball programs in the state, as you're aware. Doing something maybe at, I don't even know what it's called now, the Vivid Smart Home Arena. It's been the Delta Center as far as I know, but where it can happen. I just think it's become pretty toxic, pretty venomous when you get into somebody's home arena, and you're only doing that once a year now. So it's kind of like playing Colorado. It's almost worth double, as opposed to the days when we were in the same conference. I've never been in the same conference as BYU. I've never experienced that, but I do understand the rivalry. But no, to answer your question, I don't know what the solution would be short of, as I've stated, a cooling off period.
Did you think of Larry maybe doing it last year? Because it looks somewhat suspicious that you waited until after a home game to do it.
Well, that's what I'm talking about with a pattern. I don't know. I don't know if 2 years ago I felt there was a really rough play that was never called to anybody's attention. But if we would have went to the monitors, we probably would have had a flagrant 2. when one of our players was actually blocked out probably harder than I've ever seen anybody block somebody out. So it wasn't something that was really magnified and anybody understood, but I'll tell you, after I watched our game from 2 years ago, it was kind of disgusting to me to see the play. And then when I watched the BYU game from 2 years ago, before we played them again this year, it reminded me of kind of how nasty that play was. And it's really, I guess, with lack of a better term, would be the straw that broke the camel's back when this year's episode took place, where I feel like it's kind of escalated each year. So to answer your question, no.
Larry, perception is reality, and a lot of people have come up to us and said, this just doesn't seem like Krystkowiak, because he never backed down when he was playing from a challenge, from physical play. He would take care of it otherwise, whether that's more physical play or doing stuff on the court like boxing out a little stronger and all that. So how do you react to, this doesn't seem like a Larry Krystkowiak move?
Well, I'd like to think that, number one, Larry Krystkowiak never threw a punch that wasn't provoked. I've been in a couple fights that I regret. I really do. I played 10 years. There's a little bit more of a scrapbook there if you want to go back in time. I don't think anybody would ever describe me as a dirty player. I'm not describing BYU as dirty players. I'm saying the nature of the rivalry kind of elevates everybody's emotions. So maybe that's a little bit more problematic. I think if you know me, I'm not interested in backing down. That's probably been one of my shortfalls, kind of the eye for the eye mentality. But do you see my dilemma as a basketball coach? If you're kind of made up that way and you're put in this environment, there's part of this that I'm actually protecting myself from myself. And I don't know exactly how I would come across with our players in the week leading up to the BYU game, maybe with a little bit of the toxin and the venom that I have inside of me. It puts me in a little bit of a quandary. So, I don't have any problem what people think, and I know what I know. I know what I feel, and I also know that I'm in charge of a bunch of young men right now, and I need to talk about discipline and self-control. And I'm not a player anymore. Back when I played, it was a little different. You've seen 30 for 30 with the bad boys. I mean, every team needed to have a couple hockey thugs like myself in order to survive. I used to have a job that for about 3 or 4 years that all I did was stand up above the illegal defense line, and I needed to learn every official's name. And when my man went below the illegal defense spot, I would, hey Wally, he's illegal. So I didn't play a whole lot of offense, but I was playing defense underneath that line for a lot of years, and it involved a little physicality. So that's where it's a little bit of a dilemma. It's a little bit problematic from my side, and that's even part of the reason I almost got carried away this year when it took place. I don't need to look foolish. I don't want my players to see me looking foolish, but that is my nature. So hopefully that answers that.
Larry, is it just on-court stuff that you're concerned about, or are you also worried about fan behavior, things that's going on in the stands, things that go on, not necessarily just on the court, but off the court also?
No, I'm not interested in what's going on off the court. I feel bad. I think there's thousands and thousands of people I feel sorry for that really enjoy this rivalry and handle it with the right frame of mind and don't get carried away. I think there's always going to be a cross-section of people that get carried away, What it's really come down to, if you think about it, is there's 40 minutes of basketball that's going to try to determine some type of superiority for the year and determine who gets the bragging rights. And there's a lot of, I'm worried between the lines. I know that a lot of that nonsense comes with it. That's part of a rivalry. Jordan leverages car door gets damaged and eggs get thrown at it. And I don't really have a problem with that because I know it comes with the territory. But when we're talking about the potential with the renewed concussion protocol, I'll tell you one thing, Brandon Taylor's a couple inches away from maybe not playing for a week. I don't know if you've checked on the recent, but when somebody gets hit in the face, there's a pretty good chance it takes a while before you can play again. So that's the kind of stuff I'm worried about, that I'm in a little bit more direct control of.
What would make you think, Larry, that a year off would change all this?
I'm not sure it will. I'm not saying a year off is going to change it. I just know what I can control is that we're not going to play. You know, I'm hopeful that it can. I visited with the president on Saturday. He's visited with the president of BYU. Would you agree with me that something's broken? That there's a little hitch in our giddy up when it comes to this and some of the stuff that goes on? Maybe we need some education with our athletes. Maybe there's some interaction through the years. Just weird things happen. So I'm not sure that a year off is going to solve it. All I know is that I don't want to put ourselves in that situation a year from now. And again, that's kind of my mentality: is you can control what you can control, and that's all I'm really looking to do.
You say in your statement that compounding everything for you was what you considered to be a lack of remorse. No,
I knew you were going to mention that. Gooner, I knew that was
you put
coming
it in
from
the
your
statement.
mouth. No, you're right, I did. Lack
no-
of remorse.
Well, what did you hear from Coach Rose or Nick Emery after the most recent game?
No. No, Coach Rose actually, when we were kind of shaking hands in a stunned state when the game was over, did apologize, said, "I'm sorry about that." And I said, "You know what, Coach? This game seems to be bringing out a lot of this." That was my comment to him. That was when it first hit me that meant some crazy things are happening. And I'm not saying that anybody's cheap or dirty. I'm just saying it's when things are that heightened and elevated, some things happen. I mean, I do know that when mistakes are made, maybe a punch is thrown. I don't know that things need to be said to the player that's laying on the ground afterward. I tried to put myself in that position and said, man, if I smacked the guy unprovoked, I'm pretty sure I would probably put myself in timeout pretty quick. Go, oh man, that wasn't, rather than walking over top of him and telling him something that I don't need to share. And that's when I got on the court also, because I'm allowed to be on the court, and I asked somebody what in the world they're thinking, and I was told to go to my bench by a student athlete. So to me, it's kind of hard to swallow. That was in the days after when I started to reflect on it. It's one thing to make that physical mistake, and it's another, and to me it's a lack of remorse. And no, I've never heard as far as a phone call or anything like that from anybody, neither had Brandon. So that was part of my thinking as I was in this cooling down process.
Larry, this thing's been going on I've been watching it for 50 years, so I'm wondering, there have been great coaches involved in this rivalry. What's different about you right now? Or the other coaches kept the rivalry alive. What's different about you?
Well, I think one thing that's different, me specifically, I don't think I'm different than a lot of those coaches. I think the one thing, if you look back in the past, we've been in the same conference. So, I mean, you've got, okay, I've played 130 games since I've been here, roughly, give or take a few. 80 of those have been Pac-12 opponents because we don't have any choice. We don't happen to have any sparks flying with any of those schools. 50 of those, if you do the math, are at our discretion. That's part of the scheduling dilemma. And so when I'm given a choice to schedule somebody, and you look at the pattern, that's a bad combination. I don't think at any time, unless I'm wrong, I may be wrong. Maybe BYU and Utah there were points where they weren't in the same conference and they still played each other. This is an opportunity. If you look at the landscape, there's a long list of schools that don't play each other anymore, and it actually coincided with about the time we joined the Pac-12. So this isn't about me ending something that's been going on or I'm different or anything else. I think if you look at that, and this is no disrespect, but look, I've been up a few nights through this. No disrespect whatsoever. But as I sit back and look at it and I say, okay, you have all these years of conference matchups where you each get a home game. Now all of a sudden you're in different leagues. And this is not like I'm on my high horse thinking we're in some fancy schmancy league and they're down here. But the reality is that's a little bit inherent to building in some animosity that maybe wasn't there before. Is that not correct? When you say, hey, we're not in their league anymore takes on a different definition. And so perhaps that creates a little bit more fuel that wasn't there all those years when you were in the same league. I don't know. To answer your question, beyond that, I also know that there's a lot of things that have been going on the last 100 years that aren't right. I can give you a long list. So that argument doesn't necessarily fly either. We're getting a little more intelligent with some other things right about now. So if this needs to be put on me, as I'm the coach that blew it up, that I'm the coach that couldn't handle it, so be it.
Getting back to Kurt's question, was there another way? Dave Rose said you never talked to him about this. Couldn't you have talked about it and put pressure on both sides to make sure the behavior was correct without taking a drastic move and canceling it?
If you think that that's an option, I didn't think it's an option, personally.
Why not?
Look at the pattern of behavior. What has changed? I've never had an apology for anything. Oh, I don't need to go back. You can do the research. Look, 4 years ago, when we're at BYU and lost the close game, I was worried about one of our players. I don't know if you remember the way Cedric Martin guarded Haas. I was on the edge of my seat the whole night just thinking, oh, please, Cedric, don't do something foolish. He defended him like he's never been defended, and he did it legally without being kicked out of a game. We have 3 straight years. And if you think I'm going to call and say, hey, can you tone it down a little bit? Can we meet and have coffee? It's not realistic. Not in my arena.
Why isn't that realistic? I don't, this is important to the people of the state.
We're good.
Utah,
We're good.
you know. Well, I
No,
don't
that's good,
understand-
Dame. I'm good.
I don't understand why 2 coaches can't get together and say, hey, let's cool this. Let's keep playing hard, but let's talk about it, because this is important to an entire state of basketball.
I get your point.
So,
I get your point. I have no answer. It's kind of like, I guess, Teddy Roosevelt's comment about being in the arena with the sweat and the blood on your face as opposed to the critics. That's where I'm at. Next.
I don't follow that.
You don't have to follow it.
We're gonna move on to Colorado and Oregon questions now.
No, if there's a couple more, that's fine. And then we'll talk about Pac-12 play.
Just one more on that, Larry. In terms of playing other in-state schools,
Yep.
do those games have to be in Salt Lake City?
No, I mean, the scheduling is, it's a dilemma, it's hard. There's always been games at home and home situations, there's bye games. We're gonna do what's best. We had an opportunity this year to play a number of teams in a bye game. And I can remember telling Andy Hill, who's our scheduling coordinator, let's play Southern Utah. It makes sense to do an in-state game. So I haven't run away from that. The reason we haven't played Utah State is not because anybody's running from it. Truth be known, is because Stu Morrill and I are really good friends, and we didn't want to play each other. That's the fact, and maybe it looked a little more political, but when we visit with each other, Stu said, I don't want to play you. I said, I don't want to play you. And through our athletic directors, we managed to not play each other, but nobody's hiding. I have no problem with that, and it's certainly going to take some home and homes, but it's really liquid. It's hard. We had one year where we were going to play Utah State, and we couldn't do it because they didn't have the date that we had available. And I think that at the root of the problem is because Stu didn't really want to play us. So, everybody's got a different agenda, a different team. As you've seen with our schedule, we've had different priorities and goals in mind, and those don't always match up. I'm just thankful that we've got enough teams in state that hopefully we can, follow through and make it work.
I know you said you took these concerns to your bosses, but what about your kids? When did you talk to them about it? Did you talk to them before you made this call?
Our
or-
players?
Yeah, when you talked to them, and what was their response to the decision, or to even the concerns?
Well, no, I've talked to Brandon, obviously, at length. I wanted to find out if he had done something to, I'd heard that argument that he'd been stirring it all up and deserved it, and I wanted to make sure. And that wasn't the case. I've talked to our seniors to find out what their thoughts are on it, and I think, it would take something special for one of them to stand up and disagree, but they're all on board with what we're doing. I think they trust their coach in a lot of different ways and trust that we're going to be able to put together a schedule. We promised, when we recruited all those seniors, it was, hey guys, you're taking a leap of faith, but I can tell you we're going to be playing some big games, and that's what kids want to do. Well, go to Duke, go to Wichita State, go to Kansas. We're not going to let them down because we're not playing BYU.
Did any of them express concerns, and was there a difference maybe with the kids who are in-state and kind of grew up with that rivalry, or no?
Express concerns
Yeah.
over not playing them?
Yeah, over
No.
letting, just, okay. Did you tell them it was a one-year thing, or was that
No.
even settled then?
Mm-mm.